Hi everyone, it's been a while since I've made a video, but I finally have the urge again. This subject is quite a departure from existential literature or whatever House of Leaves is, and I do have another book that I'd like to talk about soon, but today I'm going to talk about a general health plan that I've been on for a couple of weeks now. So what's the point of the video? Initially this video was going to be more diet and weight loss focused, but as I was writing it I realized I should pivot to include general overall health. Your weight and your diet are very important to your health, but they're not the only factor, and potentially not even the most important factor. Initially, I will focus on weight because that is the main reason I was making the video in the first place. Over the holidays and for the first 3 months of the year, I put on a little bit of weight, taking a break from the fairly strict diet that I was on for an entire year before that. Why did I take a break? Because delicious food is delicious, and very addictive, hence the problem a lot of people have with their weight. This video will be me going over my general plan for my health and what I plan to do to lose the 20 to 30 pounds that I want to lose. I'll throw in relevant and hopefully interesting details, and some of it may resonate with you. This video will also help keep me on track. If I put all of this writing together about what I'm doing and then don't follow any of it, that'd be pretty embarrassing. And maybe in 5 years when I'm like, I really don't want to do this anymore, I can rewatch this video and it will rekindle my motivation to stay in shape. Why listen to me? You certainly don't have to. I'm not a doctor or an expert, but I do have some things that worked really well for me, and you might want to give some of them a try. An important difference between this and other diet and exercise plans is that I'm pretty lazy about some things, and diet and exercise definitely fit into the category some things for me. A better term than lazy might be I want to optimize my return on investment, and I want to invest very little. I want the benefits of being healthy, but I don't want it to occupy more of my time than it needs to. What you'll also probably notice as I'm going through my plan is that it isn't actually easy. I'm not just taking Ozempic, not changing anything else, and hoping for the best. There's a lot of workout guru types that are life optimization machines, planning their days out to the exact minute, and that's very motivating for some people. I'm not that. If something is overly complicated, I won't do it. I'm not interested in novel ways to keep my diet interesting or my exercise routine exciting. I want to think about this as little as possible and get results. That's the challenge to me. What's the minimum effort I can put in for the maximum payoff? Andrew Huberman seems to be the optimize everything for your health guy. I'm more of the do the bare minimum so that you don't die of a heart attack in your 60s and you're not feeble in your old age guy. I also get to be healthier now, which is great. In this video, I will talk through the plan that I put together that's the simplest way to get healthy that works for me. I have no motivation for this video other than a simple vlog type video that might resonate with some people. Final disclaimer before getting into the video. I'm not telling anyone what they have to do to get healthy. You don't have to do anything, but I'll tell you what I did and why to some extent. Some things may take a month or longer to figure out if they're actually working, and discomfort is a part of any change. However, there is a difference between discomfort and pain or sickness, so pay attention to what your body's telling you, but also be realistic about the fact that you're going to be uncomfortable for some of these changes. Another note, I'm not exceptionally overweight, so I don't know if these plans would work for everybody. If you're in a different situation than me, then you may need to try different things. I'm not saying this is a one-size-fits-all solution. I'm just saying it worked for me. Another thing, if you're overweight and you feel comfortable with how you are health-wise, then good for you. I'm not here to tell you that you're living your life incorrectly. Go do whatever you want. It's your life, you get to choose how you live it. An obvious disclaimer here, I'm not an expert, I'm not a doctor. Everything here is for entertainment only, so, do with that what you will. I'm trying hard not to sound braggadocious or super proud of how I've gotten where I've gotten health-wise, but that's inevitable in this type of video. I feel like without the anecdotal information, it will be very clinical and it won't be interesting to anybody, so I'm going to put anecdotes in there for what I've achieved so far. Oh, and to clarify the title, I'm not dying of any disease or cancer or anything. I'm just getting older, and you start to recognize that everyone is dying, either slowly or quickly. It's just the way it is. I just want to make decisions that keep my quality of life as high as possible for as long as possible without taking up a whole bunch of time. And also, I need a title that people might actually click on. Anyway, enough rambling about what's going to be in the video, on to the actual content. Alright, on to the video agenda. I'm going to go over my initial motivation, my starting point, the plan itself, benchmarks and basic high-level rules, diet details, exercise details, how I would prioritize things if I was starting from scratch, like some of you might be, and then a summary and wrap up. All right, initial motivation. And now that I've read through this part of my script a couple times, realize that pieces of it are a bit of a bummer, but if you're getting older, it's, in my opinion, something that you should kind of look at. Even if you're younger, it's something that you should look at because depending on how you're living your life, you might be headed towards something not so good. You want to get ahead of that when you can. I never thought much of my diet or exercise until about 5 years ago when I was around 200 pounds, and for reference, I'm 5'10", so I was pretty overweight. I don't particularly like food or cooking, so I was always eating fast food or single-serving meals from grocery stores. I think a lot of people fall into this bucket, and I definitely did also. I mean, I ended up there again recently. It's easy to do and it tastes good. I'm a software engineer, so I'm very sedentary. I need to move my body more, and there's a lot of options for that. So I'll go over what I chose and why. So one of the first things I did is I bought a watch that kept track of my steps. The step goal on my watch is dynamic, and at the time of recording this, it gives me a goal of 1860 steps in a day, which means I barely move at all. Before I got the watch, I thought I was doing pretty well as far as moving around goes. I thought I was pretty close to 10,000 steps, but I'm not at all. I think a lot of other people might be in this camp and they don't even know it. They don't realize how sedentary they are because they have no way of measuring it. I don't know that for sure, but I know I was a little bit surprised at how low these numbers actually got for me. The first time I remember thinking about this stuff seriously was when my dad and my ex-wife were having a conversation about an elderly mobility test called the TUG, or the Timed Up and Go test. My ex-wife is a family practice doctor, and she was talking about the strong correlation between mobility and life expectancy. I don't remember the statistics for sure, but in my head it was something like people that do really badly on mobility tests tend to die within 2 years, 95% of the time, or something like that. I'm probably way off, but that is scary enough to, stick in my head. Furthermore, I didn't really realize that there was a standard way that people die as they get older. A lot of times they're going along fine, their health might be declining slightly for a significant period of time. They fall or they get into a car accident, and then depending on their age, they may recover some amount, but then inevitably they have some other incident, their health drops very low, and then they just peter out and die. A lot of times very unpleasantly in the last couple years of their lives or less. And people don't like talking about that for understandable reasons. It's a major bummer, but it is a reality. Anyway, I think being mobile is pretty nice. I would prefer to be mobile for the last years of my life as opposed to laying in bed for the last 2 years of my life, which sounds miserable. Working backwards from that, knowing that that is something that I want to avoid, but it was absolutely where I was headed, was one of my main motivators for getting healthy. A lot of this was also motivated by my dad, who doesn't want to be enfeebled physically or mentally as he gets older, so he's done a lot of research into how to avoid that. His approach is different than mine. He's older than I am, surprisingly. He likes this stuff more than I do, and he gets bored with it more quickly than I do. He enjoys changing things and setting goals to keep things interesting. Also, I appreciate that he is being forward-thinking about this and trying to take care of himself so that the last decades of his life aren't very rough, which would in turn be very difficult for me. I appreciate that. He's also encouraging my mom to take care of her health, which she is. She's taking it seriously also, and hopefully she's going to do well with it. Is all the research that my dad has done that we've discussed correct? I have no idea. I'm only going off of what I've seen in him and myself as we've put some of these ideas in place, and we both seem to be in a much better spot than we were when we started. If any of these things went catastrophically wrong, I'd like to think that I would notice and make the necessary changes to correct for that. Back to the basic tug test idea, I couldn't sit flat on the floor and easily get back up, and I could barely get back up without using my hands. After the work that I've put in, I can easily plop down on the ground and then hop right back up, even with a little bit of extra weight on me. Another thing that was a huge motivator for me is the fact that I have a kid now who's 12 years old and he's starting to become a young man. He's going to go through his teenage years soon, and I want to be a role model for him. I don't want to be somebody that's just getting by health-wise and not really taking it seriously, at least in some capacity. I hope that my taking care of my health is something that motivates him to take care of his health as early as possible so that he has a better, longer life than he would otherwise. That's obviously very important to me. All right, next section, starting point. Part of what I want to cover in this video is how do I approach this stuff at all. For me, I have to realistically evaluate where I am and where I want to go. This evaluation will be different for everyone, of course. This is a bit of a recap for me. You don't know much about me, but I have things set up in a way that makes a lot of this much easier than it might be for other people. And I want to be transparent, I guess, about the way that my life is set up currently. I'm taking stock of which resources I have available, which you can do as well. You might need to take extra steps to get to where you want to go, and in the future I will, undoubtedly. I have a stable job that pays pretty well, so money isn't much of a concern currently. My job allows me to work from home 4 out of 5 days a week, so I can organize my week accordingly. I'm single and I don't have a lot of family commitments, so I have a lot of free time. I live really close to my parents' house, and I've worked with them to set up meals and the workout room that I use currently. Relatedly, if you have a friend that wants to go on a get healthy journey, it helps to have somebody else that's going through it with you. I work out alone, but my dad, who's worked out kind of his entire life, definitely helped me figure out the form for some of the exercises that I do, which was very useful. I eat with my parents most days when I'm being strict about my diet, which is really pleasant also. Having others involved with getting healthy is very beneficial, at least from what I can tell. So if you can't find any friends in real life that are, willing to go on the journey with you, maybe you can find some people online. I haven't tried that, but I might try it in the future. This is a weird thing, but I have anosmia. I can't smell. I think I could smell a little bit when I was like 10 years old or so, but since then it's only gotten worse. This kind of sucks, but it also impacts my ability to taste, which I think makes dieting for me a little bit easier than it might be for other people. I can walk around with smells of barbecue or whatever in the air, and it doesn't impact me at all. So that's it. I think that's all the relevant points of where I am currently. Some of this is just a list so that I can be appreciative of the things that I have that allow me to do this more easily. I know in the future that not all of these advantages will be available to me, so I'll have to solve them in some other way. One thing to pay attention to, though, is try to put yourself in a position that allows you to be successful. Okay, that's the end of that section. Again, I hope none of this came off as braggy. I'm taking advantage of the things that are available around me, and I'm making sure I'm not taking advantage of any of the people involved. My parents really appreciate that I'm trying to get healthy at the same time that they are, and I like to think that it encourages them to do so also. Same thing for my kid. As he gets older, I hope that he sees that I'm healthy and he reaches out to me when he wants help to get healthy also. That's it for the where I am currently, what I'm starting with part of the plan. Hopefully I didn't divulge too much personal information there. I just want to say the whole point of that section is I'm taking catalog of what I have available to me in a very realistic way. And I think you can do the same. The other thing is, if you do take catalog like that, you can see where there's glaring problems or maybe even advantages that you just don't see unless you actually list them out. So that's kind of the purpose of that area. Hopefully that came across. All right, on to the next section, the plan, benchmarks, and basic high-level rules. Now that I've laid out where I am, I can set up a coherent plan. While I was writing this script, I weighed around 185 pounds, and I want to be around 155 to 160 pounds. Why do I pick that particular weight? Because of this app, the Renfo app, which connects to this scale that I bought off of Amazon some time ago. This isn't sponsored. You can use any app that you want, but this is the one that I like the most as far as metrics go. You can see today I weighed myself. I'm 169.8 pounds. When I started dieting officially, I weighed 184.2 pounds. I started my diet the 1st of April. Today's the 20th. I've lost 14 pounds. And you can see here there's 3 different numbers here that are yellow still, and I prefer that they be green as one of the main motivating factors for me. This is a bit of gamification, which normally doesn't work very well for me, but for whatever reason it does in this particular case. I don't even understand what some of these things are measuring, like skeletal muscle. I guess this is how buff my skeleton is. I expect these numbers to be green by next week, and I could stop there, but I can actually get these numbers to where I think they look a little bit better. I want my body fat percentage in particular to be in the fitness area. I know I could do this by putting on a lot of extra muscle, but at my age, that seems to be hard, especially with the amount that I'm willing to work out right now. I am working out through this entire period so that I don't get weaker, but I can't put on muscle easily without changing something, so I'm just gonna lose some weight and work my way back down into this area. I took some data from 3 different days in this app and put them together to compare the numbers. This is right at the end of when I was strictly dieting, when I was at what I consider close to an ideal weight. This is when I wasn't paying attention to what I was eating at all and gained a lot of weight. And this is where I am as of yesterday. I don't really know what most of these numbers mean, and I don't really care. They just move around. They're metrics. The only 2 that I really pay attention to are weight and body fat. I'm pretty sure the scale does a good job with weight, and body fat might be a little bit off, but it's close enough for my purposes. One interesting thing from these 3 measurements is muscle mass and bone mass. With the things I've already talked to, it seems like losing any amount of bone mass would be bad, and having more muscle mass would be good. So maybe getting to where I'm a lower weight isn't the best path forward for somebody my age. But then again, look at this metabolic age number. This one's lower, so maybe it's better. I don't know. It's all gibberish. It doesn't matter. Back to the video. So the scale on its own isn't dictating how I live my life. It's just a really clear metric that I can use to organize how I'm actually doing, which is important to me, but it might not be important to you. I think some people like to see numbers, at least in some capacity. I don't obsess over them, but I do better when I actually am paying attention to them than when I don't. To this point, nothing that I'm saying here is engraved in stone. 155 to 160 is just the weight that I'm picking for now. If I find that later, oh, you know what, it's much better that I'm 175 pounds, I'll aim for that instead. I'm giving myself 1 to 3 months to actually hit the goal that I'm trying to achieve. I expect to hit it in 1 or 2 months, and then I'm going to maintain the weight through the whole 3 months once I actually do hit it. If I can't actually hit the goal by the 3-month mark without constantly cheating, which I haven't been doing so far, then I'll be surprised, but it's another data point that I can use to make more realistic plans in the future. All right, that's it for the plan section. On to the diet details. To reiterate, I'm not saying that this is what you should do, but I'm saying it's what I did and it worked for me. You might find that you're a zealous nutritionist in this section, or that you're pretty laid back about food. Sorry if I make anyone angry, it's not my intent. Food is something that people are very understandably passionate about, so I take that into consideration as I'm going into this section. Try whatever you want, just make sure that you're honest about what you discover. Otherwise, you might trick yourself into thinking that it's just not possible for you to lose weight, or you might get yourself into a situation where you're very malnourished in some way and you're not correcting for it. Both of those aren't ideal. In general, the rules that I'm following is that protein and fat macros are all you should care about, mostly in the form of non-lean beef, with almost no carbs, eating 1 time a day, with 1 cheat day every week. I think that this, at least the macros part, is what a lot of tech bros do, but I'm not really a part of that community, so I'm not sure. It also lines up with keto and intermittent fasting, which wasn't really my goal starting out, but it's where I ended up. So first of all, I'm going to go over why my frequency of eating is what it is. Why do I only eat 1 time a day on non-cheat days? Interestingly enough, a major reason that my diet got to the point that it's at now is because I got Invisalign for my teeth. You have to wear the mouthpieces, or trays as they call them, for 22 hours a day, every day, and you can't eat with them in. You have to take out the trays, floss, brush, clean the trays, and put them back in every time you want to eat. What I first learned from this is that I don't actually need to eat breakfast. And then eventually I learned that I don't need to eat dinner either. I can eat 1 time a day for 10 to 20 minutes in between the window of 11 to 1 pretty easily. And I found that out because I didn't want to have to deal with Invisalign all that much. This is awesome for me because, again, I just want something very simple. I can eat 1 big meal a day and be done. It also doesn't cost very much, but it does require some planning. This is intermittent fasting, which I had heard of before, but I did it mostly because I wanted to deal with Invisalign maintenance as little as possible. My whole day with Invisalign would be, I wake up, take them out, brush my teeth, clean the trays, put them back in, wait until lunch, take them out, eat, floss, brush, clean them, put them back in, and then I was done for the day. Sometimes if my mouth felt particularly gross in the evening, I'd brush my teeth then too, but honestly, I didn't need to most of the time. Maybe that was the wrong way to do it. I don't know. My teeth didn't rot out, so I think I did okay. As with all of this, should I have done things differently? I'm not sure, but I haven't had any cavities and my gums are healthy, so what I did seemed to work well for me. All right, on to my food selection, which again is pretty simple. Like I've mentioned, I live on my own and I live close to my parents, who were also changing their diet, which made this easier for me. My dad is actually allergic to a lot of foods, and he was having major problems with arthritis. He found that when he was eating a lot of foods with carbs and sugars, his hands would get so bad that he could barely open and close them, and it was painful when he did so. He also had flare-ups of gout and problems with his knees, which he believes was caused by inflammation from consuming carbs and sugars. He decided to try the beef elimination diet, which he was slowly working towards anyway, trying to find things that would stop him from being in pain constantly. A side note for this, if you're having any chronic health problems that sound similar to this that might be caused by inflammation, you might want to give the beef elimination diet a try for a month or so. It really helped my dad out. Again, I'm not a health expert, but for my dad anyway, he has a very strong indicator of whether or not he's been eating clean. If he does decide to have a cheat day, all the symptoms of his hands not really working as well and having pain in his shoulders and knees come rushing back. I wasn't having the same physical problems that my dad was having, but there is a high chance that I will run into them in the future. I'm a programmer, I play guitar, and I like playing PC games, and all of these things require that my hands work. I asked my parents if they wouldn't mind if I chipped in for the food and helped them cook it occasionally, if I could also try out the diet just to see what it was like. My dad bought an enormous grill, and we bought a vacuum sealer, and then we bought steak and cooked steak and ate steak. Steak, and steak. That's all we were having for a significant period of time. Sometimes Sometimes we would also mix it up with some high-fat hamburger, but still beef. We all started taking supplements more seriously as well. My parents went a different route than me, buying individual types of supplements that they would mix together so that they could very accurately control exactly what they were consuming. I decided to take AG1, Alpha Brain, creatine, a multivitamin, vitamin C, and vitamin D. I know that AG1 and Alpha Brain are kind of expensive. There might be alternatives that are significantly less expensive that give you basically the same thing. It's just the easiest option for me right now. I know I'm probably missing some things that I probably should be taking, but also I don't really care. I'm pretty sure I wasn't getting a perfect vitamin profile from Hungry Man Dinners and Jack in the Box. And I can tell when I forget to take any of these things for a day or two, I feel a bit duller than normal, and my energy levels are a little bit lower. So it seems like they're doing something. A note here, some of you might be thinking, well, of course you need to take supplements. You're not eating a well-balanced diet. And to that I say, yeah, maybe. I do think that almost any diet would do pretty well with supplements though. I'm not here to champion one type of diet over another either. This is just what I'm doing and what works for me. Could I just do without the supplements that I'm taking? I assume I could. No, or maybe I would die immediately. I don't know. I also only drank water and coffee for this entire period of time. I didn't use creamer, but I did use 1 packet of Splenda in each of the 4 small cups of coffee I had in the morning. It was also half caffeine, so I wasn't super wired all the time. I actually bought some metal straws too so that I could drink coffee with my Invisalign in. I'd put an ice cube or 2 in the coffee to cool it down, and that seemed to work pretty well. For most of the time that I've been eating like this, I've always allowed myself 1 cheat day a week. There was a period of time where, just to kind of see what it was like, I did eat just exactly what my parents were eating the 1 time a day. Very, very strict, and it kept my energy levels consistent, but the single cheat day a week doesn't seem to do much to me, other than I know for a fact that I can completely blow away any weight loss that I've had over the course of the week on 1 cheat day alone, if I'm not at least kind of careful with what I'm eating. But as long as I'm still weighing myself the days after, or the day after I cheat, I can kind of see how much it's going to impact me. One other note on this, my hardest workout deadlifts are on Fridays, so if I'm going to pick a cheat day, it makes sense, I think, to do it the day before I'm doing a really heavy lift. Going into a heavy lift day with a caloric deficiency definitely impacts your ability to lift the weight, so something else to keep in mind with where your cheat day is going to be. I don't have any of the strong symptoms that my dad does, but I do feel a little bit bloated after cheat days, usually. I don't feel quite as good as I do other days, but it goes away pretty quickly. From what I've learned through all this, I don't think you need carbs at all, but a lot of people I think don't get enough fat in their diet. And of course with beef, a lot of the fat that you get is going to be saturated fat. We also introduced butter at some point in the diet, and I think we always had salt as something that we would add to the steaks. There's a lot of different ways to season steaks. As long as none of them add a significant carb profile, I think any of them will work. Things like barbecue sauce that have a lot of sugar in them, you want to stay away from those. People that I've discussed my diet with have often expressed concern with heart conditions and constipation. Now, heart conditions, I can't tell if I've hit any of those or not. I've never had trouble with constipation at all. I will say that with coffee, sometimes my stomach gets a bit upset in the morning and I end up having to run to the bathroom a few times. So keep that in mind. As I got more strict about when I was eating and what I was eating, I started to realize a couple things. One of the main things was that I was rarely ever hungry in all of my life previous to doing this diet. I didn't really understand what hunger was. What I was feeling, I would classify as cravings, which is different than hunger. And I think cravings a lot of times are set up by an intake of carbs. It's one of the things that you have to take into consideration when you're setting up 1 meal a day, is if you have a high carb intake at that particular meal, I do think that it's harder not to cheat later in the day. If you keep the carb count low, then you don't seem to get those really strong cravings later in the evening of, I gotta have some kind of snack, at least in my experience. Also, I just had to break the habit of actually eating 3 times a day, which takes some time. Once I got into the swing of things with this though, eating once and eating mostly just steak, beef of some sort, my energy levels were high and I felt really good. An interesting side note, when I was in college, I worked at PetSmart, and I used to think, why don't we have some kind of dog food that you only need to eat this single meal and it gives you all the nutrients that you actually need? Something like Bachelor Chow in Futurama. Well, that does seem to exist. I think it's beef, and maybe the occasional occasional bit of liver, and some supplements. And at least for me, it seemed to cover all the bases that I needed to feel healthy and full of energy. Will this work for everyone? I have no idea, but you could give it a try and see if it works for you. It works really well for me. Eventually, my parents and I expanded into other things slowly. Things like heavy cream, chicken, eggs, spices, and a few other simple foods. Things like jalapenos and hot sauce, stuff like that. We added them all slowly to see how much they would actually impact my dad. Nothing processed and nothing that is only carbs like fruits and vegetables. There are a lot of carnivore diet food channels out there now, and they have a lot of different recipes. So if the beef elimination diet sounds absolutely hellish to you and you just don't want to try it, you could start with those recipes instead. And then again, if you actually do have any kind of medical condition that you're trying to find the source of, you might want to go down to the beef elimination diet, but maybe you'll try these carnivore diet options and they'll work great for you and you'll achieve everything that you want with just those. We've integrated a lot of these, and some of them work better than others. Some of them are tastier than others. Some of them are as good as anything that you would have at a restaurant. Some of them also do have some carbs in them, so you have to be a little bit careful with them. One last point about the foods that I eat: it is really hard to be strict if you have junk food around the house. I have almost nothing to eat at my house. I don't buy more junk on my cheat day than I can eat, so I never have leftovers laying around that are tempting me, and I think that's important. If you really need a snack, try eating steak dipped in butter or maybe some really clean beef jerky, although that doesn't have fat in it, which is a lot of time what I think your body is craving. When I get my protein and fat content kind of close, I don't feel hungry and I lose weight. I know what that feels like now, so I know what I'm targeting, and that's a huge boon once you actually find it. Here's the last section of food. It's the final tool that I found that I needed to lose weight, which is fasting. I'm already doing intermittent fasting, but in this type of fasting, I mean just not eating for a day, which I'm doing today actually. I got to the point before, and I kind of got there again, where even when I'm controlling my portions, I still am not losing weight. I kind of hit a wall, and I found a good tool for that is just to not eat for a day here and there. For me, this kind of means that I'm going on a 48-hour fast, since I only eat once a day anyway, and I'm skipping one, noontime meal. So then I've got noon, nothing, noon, 48 hours. I started with this just one day a week, and I found that I didn't feel terrible with it. It did give me like a weird anxious energy in the evening, and I did get legitimately hungry, but a lot of times I could channel that energy into something. Occasionally it does impact my ability to sleep, I've found, so that's not ideal, but it's only occasionally. Sometimes I sleep fine. This is also where I really learned the difference between being hungry and having cravings. And hunger isn't the worst feeling in the world, at least in the amounts that I've had it. I'm sure once you get past a certain amount of hungry, it's absolutely miserable. I will say, being hungry, it seems to ebb and flow. You'll be hungry for maybe 10 minutes, and as long as you can tough it out through that period, then it kind of goes away. So my weight loss weeks ended up being 2 days of not eating at all, 4 days of only eating one time a day, strictly, and then one cheat day. This seems pretty crazy, but once you're down to eating only one time a day, it's really not that much different to just not eat for one day, at least to me. I did fast for 2 days in a row once while I was still eating like this, and I had a lot of trouble sleeping, like a lot more trouble sleeping, that second day than I did when I just fasted for one day, but I might try it again sometime. I still do take AG1 and the vitamins and supplements that I've talked about on the days when I fast. Maybe this isn't good for you, I don't know. I didn't have negative reactions to any of it, so I think it's fine for me. Even taking AG1, which is like 50 calories, I did notice that fasting for a day definitely does move the scales, and it moves them pretty quickly. Could I die from fasting? Or could I live to 130 years old because I'm fasting? I don't think either of these is likely, and I was really just seeing what I could do to get the numbers in the app to move once they got stuck, and this worked. Alright, final notes on dieting. I never portion controlled my food by weighing it, but I did pay a lot of attention to how large my portions actually were, and I paid a lot of attention to how I felt in the evenings. If I was starving, I knew that I had to increase it a little. I didn't want the weight loss to be almost intolerable, so I paid attention to that. And then if I didn't lose weight, I'd make sure to cut it back a little bit the next day. Eventually, I found that I could eyeball most meals and still lose weight, although this might be a reason that I needed to actually fast for a day here and there also. If I did portion controls, maybe I'd find it's a lot easier. But again, I'm aiming for easy, and to me, it's easier just to eyeball it, correct with a day off here and there. A little bit of discomfort, again, doesn't kill you. Parts of this learning curve absolutely did suck. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I was not like, hey, this is awesome the whole way through. There were days that I really screwed things up and I was absolutely starving, and then I would go and eat something and feel terrible that I cheated. Then there were days that I just toughed it out. That wasn't much better. If you're really off on things, it does stink. Again, a note about carbs. If you're eating any amount of carbs and then you feel cravings later, just pay attention to that. If I put ketchup on ground beef or a hamburger patty and then I had a lot of cravings later, I paid attention to that and I would cut back on ketchup or use something else. Jalapenos and cheese is great. All right, that's it for the food section. On to the exercise section. Okay, so this section of the video actually depends a lot on research that my dad has done that just sounds correct to me. I've only done cursory research on this, but I believe most of what I'm going to say in here is correct. If I'm horribly wrong about anything, let me know. The basic idea is to keep up bone mass and strength, you have to lift heavy things. My dad found a few books, one called Starting Strength, one called Barbell Prescription, and he kind of cobbled together a workout for me based on those. The full name of Starting Strength is Starting Strength Basic Barbell Training 3rd Edition, and the Barbell Prescription, Strength Training for Life After 40. I didn't even know the full title of Barbell Prescription, but it really lines up with what I'm trying to do with this video now that I know the full title. So definitely pick up those books if you want more information than I'm giving in this section. I lay this out for a reason. The weightlifting plans that I've seen can get very intricate. You can read about the best way to cycle the exercises that you're doing, carb loading, caffeine, and how you should use it in your workouts, etc., etc. There's a million different things that you can read about how to work out online. Is there a workout plan that I can follow that is like Bachelor Chow? A single thing that I can repeat and get pretty good results with? And the answer is, I guess so. It worked as well as you're seeing for me. On to workout details. What I do is a very simple version of the 5x5 workout. I work out 3 times a week, and on average it takes 40 to 50 minutes for each workout. I only do 4 exercises, and they are squats, deadlifts, overhead presses, and bench presses. I don't really like deadlifts and I hate squats, so of course I do those every single workout. I alternate bench presses and overhead presses every workout. I do 1 heavy lift every workout. I do heavy squats on Mondays, I do heavy overhead presses or bench presses on Wednesdays, and I do heavy deadlifts on Fridays. The other exercises are all light, which is different than a normal 5x5. They interleave medium in there also. I just want to keep it simpler even than that. The 5x5 part of that is that I do 5 sets of 5 reps for whatever heavy exercise I'm doing that day after a few warm-up sets. I just barely want to be able to complete the last rep of the last set of whatever I'm lifting heavy with, and then I know that I'm around the weight that I should be lifting. In case you haven't worked out before, reps are repetitions, like completing the exercise once completely, and sets are sets of repetitions. The whole workout plan ends up looking like this. And I will show on the screen what it looks like. I also do 2 sets of pull-ups, 8 to 10, and then I alternate between sit-ups and back extensions to keep my core a little bit stronger. I just throw those into my workouts. So why did I choose this workout? It lines up with my goal of being mobile and strong, really focusing on my core strength. Again, I don't want to be feeble in old age. I sit all day and I've never had back problems, which might partially have to do with luck, but hopefully if I stick with this exercise regimen, I'll never have problems. Another reason to choose this is it's really, really simple. I only have to remember a couple of weights for each exercise. I go into the workout room, completely turn off my brain, do the work, and then I'm done. Why not do the real 5x5? I just want it to be simple. I might be losing a ton because of this choice. I don't know. Also, I don't really care. I also eat after I work out. I do not eat before, so I've been fasting for quite a while right before the workout. I found that even if I fasted the day before, I can still work out. It is hard, especially with the heavier lifts, the squats and the deadlifts, so I try to avoid that. I make sure that I eat something the day before I'm doing those heavy lifts. I already went over my food intake, but I thought I should mention I'm not doing any protein shakes or anything. I drink the AG1 and creatine mixed together at about 8, work out around 11, and that's it. I think my form is good enough that I'm not going to hurt myself by doing this. I haven't hurt myself so far, and I've been doing it for a couple of years now. I'm going to continue with it. Again, I might not be getting as strong as I could be getting, but I'm not getting weaker, and that's really more in line with what my goals are anyway. Again, an interesting point about this is that I might actually get weaker as I'm losing weight. As I gain weight, I actually did increase my weights for my squats and my deadlifts by 20 pounds, and I don't know that I can do that once I lose the 20 pounds. I'll find out as I get there. If I do lose my strength and ability to do those, I will drop down to 4x4s or even 3x3s if necessary, and then hopefully work my way back up, or drop my weight back down so I can do 5x5s again and then work my way back up. I find that the balance between how much I weigh and how strong I actually am is an interesting problem that I just don't want to think too much about now. I'm going to hit my weight goals, and then I'll figure out what I'm going to do from there. Other things that I do for working out are rowing and pull-ups. I have a Concept 2 rowing machine, and again, I do not get very much cardio, so I think it's important that I incorporate this again. But in my time off, I completely fell off on this, so I'm getting back into it now. I do 20 minutes in the morning. I try to do it first thing when I wake up, but sometimes I do it a little bit later. And I just try to row for 20 minutes and hit about 4,000 meters. I think it's important for weight loss that I increase my cardio, so I've did this 1 time a week and then 2 times a week, and I'm going to get up to 5 times a week again, which is what I was at when I was at my fittest. I also have a pull-up bar set up next to me. It's literally 5 feet away from me. So sometimes throughout the day, I'll just go over and do a couple of pull-ups. The reason I'm doing pull-ups is I'd like my arms to be a little bit bigger. I know this isn't the greatest way to do it, but it's something, and it's very easy to fit into my job. Basically, when I get bored with whatever I'm working on, I go over and do a couple of pull-ups, walk around a bit, and then come back and keep working. All right, final notes for the exercise section. What I've developed, I think, is a happy medium between being a legit weightlifter and not doing anything at all, which is about where I want to be, I think. I have a weird relationship with weightlifting where it seems to be a highly competitive thing where you're either doing it right or you're not, but maybe that's just my perspective on it. I don't know. It seems like no matter what you try in the weightlifting arena, somebody's going to tell you that you're doing something slightly wrong one way or the other. I'm absolutely sure that there are super welcoming people that will let you into the weightlifting world with very little judgment, and they probably vastly outnumber the people that are very outspoken about you have to do it this way. But for some reason, I have this negative perception of that world. If you are trying to get into weightlifting and you've never done it before, it might be a good idea to get a trainer at the gym and just tell him, you know, I want to learn these exercises and then I want to go off on my own for a bit. And maybe you'll really get into it. Maybe you'll want to do a whole bunch of different types of exercises. Maybe you'll love having a trainer. I know for me, I just want to know what are the few exercises that I can do. I'll keep doing those and hope for the best. And so far, it seems to be doing pretty well for me. That's the end of the weightlifting section. The next section is prioritizing things. I didn't go over this, but I learned all of these things very slowly over time. Any plan like this can seem overwhelming if it's all thrown at you at the same time. And to me, this is a relatively simple plan compared to a lot of what you could look up and what you could do. Another general health idea that I've discussed with others is health is kind of like a 4-legged stool, and you really need 3 of the legs in place to be healthy. The 4 legs are good nutrition, exercise, sleep, and low stress. Stress management is something that I don't really need to worry about very much because I'm not really that anxious of a person. The point is, you might need to focus on different things than I did based on your personality and which of those things is the most challenging for you. A lot of these things support and reinforce each other. So to say this is the most important thing versus this is kind of a tricky thing to do. So let's say I was starting from scratch and I had to pick from all of the things that I've gone over to say, this is the most important. This is the one that I'm going to start with, and then I'll go from there. The first thing that I would say, even though I didn't explicitly mention it in any of this, is you have to eliminate any kind of extreme addiction that you have. I didn't go into this a lot, but setting up a diet and exercise routine really requires a lot of discipline, and you're not going to have a lot of discipline if you're having trouble with substance abuse. If you're there, you know you're there, as long as you can back up a little bit from it and see it. Take care of that first. You've got to get to the point where you're just baseline, not addicted to something that's going to really impact your motivation to start a plan like this. So cut back on that to the extent that you need to, and then proceed. After thinking about it some, I think the next most important thing is actually the weightlifting part, and there's a couple reasons for this. This is the hardest to learn and the most intimidating in my opinion. This is the one that you can really hurt yourself if you're doing it incorrectly. It's also the one that's, I think, going to give you the most benefit as far as not being fragile as you get older. Once you get the basics, it can also be pretty simple. And I haven't seen any downsides to doing the same exercises that I'm doing over and over again for 2 to 3 years now. I've never really hurt myself, and I've never suffered more than a small sprain maybe here and there. Nothing that even stopped me from doing my next workout. Discipline is important, and learning how to exercise and sticking with the regiment of exercising is a great way to improve your discipline. So I think that's a really important thing to start with. Next up on my list would be intermittent fasting. This is partially a convenience thing for me, but I also find that I sleep a lot better if I haven't eaten for 8 hours before I go to sleep. I only found this once I started intermittent fasting, of course. Eating once a day also works great with meal prep. It's much easier to prepare 6 meals for a week versus 18, so keep that in mind. You have to think through what you're doing and what works so that you can get comfortable with it, and once you do, it's a really beneficial thing to do in my opinion. The next up is a keto type diet, or a keto diet. This is pretty closely related to intermittent fasting, since I think you'll have trouble eating only 1 time a day if you're eating a whole bunch of sugary stuff, for example. But you might not need to be as strict as some people. I Personally, never checked to see if I'm in ketosis, but I assume I am. But maybe I'm way off like I was with my step count. The next thing I would learn is full day fasting. This would move down the list if I wasn't actively trying to lose weight right now, but there's also just some cool things about it that I didn't really mention. Eating is really pleasant, and to some people, it's like the best thing about being alive in today's current day and age. There are so many good things out there, and it's a major reason that so many people have trouble with their weight. So how is that related to full day fasting? Well, when you have one cheat day and you really want one particular thing that day, your appreciation for that food is just incredibly high. I find that when I'm not being strict with my diet and I can eat whatever I want, in the end, all food kind of just ends up at the point that it's, hey, this is pretty good. And that's all I think about it. When I've been eating well all week and I fast the day before I have a cheat day, and that day I have a donut and coffee, it is some of the best food I've ever eaten in my entire life. It's incredible. It's hard to put into words how good it is. So if for no other reason, you might want to try a day fasting just to see how good your favorite foods are when you're legitimately hungry. The next up would be supplements and sunlight. I completely forgot to mention sunlight, and I could have fixed it in my script, but I apparently didn't want to. So now I'm also adding it down here at this summary area. I just got a cheap foldable chair from Amazon so I don't have to lay on the ground. I throw a towel out on it, lay down. It's a nice break in the middle of the day too. The supplements I've already discussed do tend to help my energy level also, and listening to people I respect to some extent talk about them, it sounds like they're a very good thing to have in your diet, so I'm gonna stick with them. I rarely ever get sick since I've started doing all of these things, and if I do get sick, I get healthy really quickly again. I only stay sick for maybe a half a day or a day, so I think that's a pretty good indicator. I don't know for sure that it's the supplements that are doing it or laying out in the sun that's doing it, but definitely doesn't seem to hurt. It's probably a combination of all the things that are keeping me healthy. I don't know. There's a lot of moving pieces and variables in this system, so I'm not sure exactly which thing is responsible for what, but I'll continue taking supplements regardless. Another thing about laying out in the sun and supplements is if you really don't want to do anything at all, these are some very easy things that you can do that I do think will help with your health, even if you're not working out at all and you're eating whatever you want. The next up is rowing or some form of cardio. It's very low because I don't really like doing it. For me, it's important, but it's one of the first things that I let slip when I start being loose with my diet and exercise routine. One thing I don't think I said anywhere else, but even when I was eating badly, the one thing that I kept doing throughout that is my heavy workouts. I only missed maybe 2 weeks total of that through all of last year. And there were times when I had planned to take breaks anyway. So I obviously value weightlifting more than I do any of the other stuff, including rowing and other cardio. I do think that it helps a lot with losing weight, so I need to get back to it if I actually want to lose weight. This also seems incredibly important since I am so sedentary. My heart rate does get up when I'm lifting heavy weights, but doing some amount of cardio just because I'm sitting still for so long during the day is probably a lot more important than I think it is, but it's hard to prioritize these things. And again, just because I don't like doing it very much, I put it kind of towards the bottom. Could be completely wrong about that. And the last thing that I'll say is flexibility and other things. There are surely some things that I'm missing that some people swear by, like yoga or ice baths or meditation. I know that they exist. I just personally haven't tried them, so I don't know how much good they would do me. Are some of them better than any of the stuff that I'm doing now? Potentially. I don't know. I just know that at this point, all the things that I already listed are the things that I want to do, so that's what I'm going to stick with for now. And that's it for the priority section. On to the last section of the video, summary and final thoughts. Hopefully this video will be helpful for somebody that's trying to get healthier. Even if you go a completely different route than I did, realizing that you can be sick less often and that you can not just add years to your life, but add healthy, productive years to your life is something that's really valuable. A lot of people say things like, my back hurts all the time. I must just be getting old. And that's an unfortunate conclusion to come to when your body is telling you that you're hurt in some way or that you might be doing something wrong. It's not just getting old. There might be other problems that you can actually fix. Now, I'm not saying that everyone can fix these. If somebody actually has a legitimate back issue, I'm not saying, diet and exercise will fix any problem. That being said, I don't know everyone's situation, but I can't imagine that it can't be at least a little bit improved by taking control of some of these things that aren't hard as long as you kind of implement them in a disciplined and slow way. An implicit piece of all the stuff that I've talked about is just basic organization and clear metrics. Clear metrics allow for clear goals. I'm not compulsive about them, but I also don't completely ignore them, at least not most of the time. I did recently, and now I've got to kind of work my way back to where I want to be. Another thing I didn't mention is I'm not perfect at any of this. I have times where I'll cheat and then I don't want to get on the scale the next day because I'm afraid of what it's going to tell me. But even that is a data point, and at least to me, it's something that I should look at, recognize, and mull over a little bit if I need to. That little voice in my head that's saying, "You coward," when I choose not to step on the scale is right in a way. I really should just stand on the scale and see what it says. I don't beat myself up too badly when I make mistakes. I just learn what I can and I move on. Some of the mistakes are really not that big a deal, and some of them are very big deals. It's good to know which is which. I don't beat myself up too badly, but I do hold myself accountable for the decisions that I've made and how they impact what I'm aiming for. With all of this and the amount that I'm disciplined, I try to create as coherent a story as I can so that I can follow it and I don't get surprising results. And so far, it's worked really well for me. I think some people find a lot of comfort in having more data than I do, potentially weighing all of their foods, documenting every single workout they have, putting everything together in spreadsheets, and having a lot of hard data that really reflects where their health is at any given time. And I think some people are on the complete opposite end of that. They don't keep track of anything. They have some basic rules for what they eat, some basic rules for what they do as far as working out or being active go, and they're in amazing health. So that works for them. There's not a one-size-fits-all to any of this. Just make sure that you're paying enough attention to understand if you're steering yourself in the correct direction, and you can somehow tell if you're doing well or not. Don't let failure or success spin you completely out of control either. So I guess that's it. I may put some kind of addendum to the end of this. I have a feeling I'm not going to edit this really fast. It's probably going to take me a month or so to edit. Hopefully it was useful to somebody, if not just future me. Good luck with whatever you try, and I'm sure I will make another video in the future sometime. I'll probably go back to doing some kind of book review next. If you liked that more than you like this, then great. Yeah, that's it. Bye.